This episode is sponsored by Linode. Linode is offering listeners of this podcast a $20 credit, which is good for 4 free months at their lowest plan. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for $5 a month. You can get your servers in any of their 10 data centers, and their high memory plans start at 16 gigabytes. Get a server running in under a minute. They do hourly billing with a monthly cap on all plans, and add-on services like backups, node balancers, Longview, etc. VMs for full control, running Docker containers, encrypted disks, VPNs, etc. You can run a private Git server. They provide native SSD storage, 40 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors. They have 24/7 friendly support, even on holidays, and a 7-day money-back guaranteed. So go check them out at linode.com/myangularstory. Hey everybody, and welcome to another My JavaScript Story. Incidentally, because of today's guest, we're also going to post this on My Angular Story. So if you're listening to that feed and you're like, what the? Now you know. We have Austin McDaniel here. Austin, do you want to say hi?
Yeah. Hey everyone, how's it going?
So we had you on episode 275 of JavaScript Jabber, talking about zones in Node.js. We've been trying to get you on Adventures in Angular for a while. Probably ought to just finish lining that up. You spoke at Angular Remote Conf last year and talked about virtual reality. And yeah, it's just been kind of fun to get to know you and chat with you a little bit there. Also, are you still a panelist on Angular Air?
Yep, I'm a panelist on Angular Air and a core Angular team member.
Awesome. So does that mean you work for Google then?
Yep, kind of. In a roundabout way.
Okay, gotcha. It's always interesting to see how that all gets arranged. So I've known a few people that they interned and then they contracted and then Google said, okay, move to California. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Opportunity came about to kind of work on some of the Angular material stuff. And, we'll talk about this later, but I spent a lot of time like building widgets and things like that. And so it was a natural fit. And so I've been helping that team build out a lot of the Angular material components.
That's really cool. And Angular material is one of the things that I really like. I got in, I think I saw an NGConf talk from this year where they kind of walked through it. And that was enough for me to really get in and make it work and then go, oh, wow, this is cool. So, and then I could build the rest of my UI from it. Of course, I'm still waiting for them to release it from beta, but that's...
Hey, it's an RC now.
Oh, it's an RC?
RC2, stable coming pretty soon, like next couple of weeks.
Oh, I must have missed that. We'll have to get, Thomas and you and a few of the other folks that we know are involved in that. Get you on and get the details.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of been a long road, right? Like, you go to like AngularJS material and you like see all these widgets, and then you go to like the new material and it doesn't look like we're quite there, but it's an evolution and a process. And I can tell you, from firsthand experience, like the Angular material components that are coming out as part of like Angular, 2+ they're really high quality. And when I talk about like high quality, I mean like they are very methodical, thought through around accessibility, internationalization, focus management, like everything. And they're used at Google. So they're being used in hundreds of internal and external projects at Google. And like they are pretty bulletproof, right? Like, yeah. And, every release goes through like every time we cut a release, it runs every Google test against them. So it's really like the components are really high quality. They are really it's kind of like lessons learned from the first time, right? Like there's a lot of abstractions that we've made. Like we've created this thing called the CDK, which is a component developer kit, which basically abstracts out some of like positioning and things like that you need to kind of build your own components if Angular material isn't enough for you. And it's been a really cool project to contribute to and be a part of that team. So I won't get too sidetracked on that though.
Yeah, well, and this has been a huge tangent because usually I start with how'd you get into programming, and we've already been Angular material, so cool. So, anyway, yeah, let's get back into the regular flow of this show, and then as we get toward the end, I usually do talk about what you're working on now, and so we can dig in a little bit more about how you got into the Angular material stuff and what's going on there and things like that. So let's start at the beginning. How did you get into programming?
So I think like any curious, little boy, I started programming when I was about 10 or 11, sometime around there. My parents, we weren't very privileged, and I really wanted a laptop. And there was just a 10-year-old wants a laptop back in the 90s. That's like $5,000, right?
Yep.
And so what they bought me is one of these VTech things that has all these games pre-programmed in it. But the one game that I really liked, it was called Basic, and it was basic programming. And so that's really where I started on this little VTech thing. It had a screen that's smaller than my iPhone, right?
Right.
And doing basic programming on that. And then I kind of went, kind of outgrew that, and, computers got a little cheaper. And then I started kind of doing, QBasic and, that type of stuff. And when I was probably 16, I decided I was going to make, this was when Yahoo was a guide, not really a search engine. I decided I was going to make my own Yahoo of directories of things that I liked. And so I went off this adventure of building my own little guide site. And that was really how I got into web development. So I tried to mimic them. It was, I actually still have the files, so it's funny to go back and look back at all the tables and all the really terrible code that I did. But that's how I really got into doing web development. And for over a decade now, I've been doing web enterprise JavaScript web development. And I always kid around I remember working in, the enterprise shops, and I would be the web developer there, and they'd be well, we're going to have the real programmers doing the back end and stuff like that. And I'm what are you guys talking about? JavaScript's just a toy language, right?
Yep.
So I always kid, I was on the JavaScript train before it was cool, before the cool kids. And so it's been a really interesting journey. When I was in college, I actually most kids had jobs at grocery stores or fast food joints. I would slice PSDs to Photoshop files to HTML and CSS. So I've always kind of been doing it, doing web development throughout my career. For the past,
Austin loves pain. That's what I just heard. Austin loves pain.
Back in IE6 land, back in IE6 was still new. I can remember doing PNG fixes for where you put the little 1 pixel thing and the hack for the PNG transparency fixes in IE6 and all
yeah.
that. Oh my gosh, it's been really exciting to see where it's gone. And I've kind of been doing this for, like I said, I've been doing it professionally for about a decade now. And, work for a variety of different companies, small to really large. And it's funny, everything kind of comes back to the basics, right? Whatever app you're building, right? It always comes back to the basics. You need a list view, you need some widgets, you need some type of thing, right? And you're always building widgets. And back before back in the jQuery days, I used to fancy myself to build just all kinds of widgets. I was just, whatever little like jQuery plugin, I would build tons of them, like sorting and all this type of stuff. And I really enjoyed that. And kind of as like web development has matured, like now everything's pretty much a widget, except for we call it components, right?
Right.
And so I've always kind of been doing that. And about halfway through my career, this was really about the time like jQuery was kind of getting, popular. But Angular and I don't even think React was around yet. Like Angular's been out for a while. I worked on a project called like JavaScript MVC, which was like one of the first like MVC patterns for JavaScript. And I worked a lot on that core team of building out like this like binding system and all these type of things. So just to kind of see where we're at today, it's really exciting. We've came so far from like, using jQuery everywhere, like spaghetti code, anonymous functions and things like that, to, these really clear, concise, and typed in some cases files that we have today. It's been a really exciting ride.
Nice. And we've actually had Justin Meyer on the show to talk about Done.js, which was JavaScript MVC. So, interesting stuff. I'm curious though.
I used to work with Justin quite a bit. Like, I was on his team working on, we call it Done.js now, and like Can.js.
Yep.
And actually built out some of the dependency management stuff, and that's in Done.js back in the day, and some of the Vue stuff that's still being used around like two-way binding and stuff like that. So that was a cool experience.
Awesome. So I want to back up a little bit. What was it about JavaScript, back before it was cool, that you thought was cool, that got you so interested in it? I kind of got into JavaScript once it really started being used for powerful things. Otherwise, it was just an inconvenient way to have to do a couple of things with jQuery. Yeah.
So, I pre-jQuery, right? I was doing things pre-jQuery, like back, mid-90s. And I really saw JavaScript, right, despite like all the browser hacks that you had to do back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
But pretty much everything sucked, so you had to do it all, right?
Right. Yep.
And everything was pretty limited, but everything from like doing the button hovers and stuff like that, what we call DHTML, things like that, like
it really just the bad old days.
I've really been fascinated by UI. When I was actually kind of young, like I thought I wanted to be an artist, and my grandmother goes, "Have you ever heard of the starving artist?" And I was like, "Oh, well, I kind of want to make sure that I can put food on the table." So I thought like doing UI type work was like a nice compromise there, right? And I really enjoyed like the satisfaction of like when you build something on the UI and it's interactive and you can interact with it, versus like building something on the back end or something like that. Like it doesn't feel as rewarding to me. So the fact that like I could build things pretty simple, despite like all the limitations back then, it's pretty easy to get into JavaScript, right?
Right.
Especially back then, like you just throw a file on the screen with some code, right? And the fact that like you could do it so easily, like the language was pretty easy to pick up for, someone as a teenager. And, the satisfaction that I had of like just being able to change something and see it and interact with it on the screen kind of just always drew me to it. And I really felt like the web was the future. Right. Like I didn't, I could have went into like desktop applications and things like that, but the web was really starting to like thrive back then and really starting to take off. And I was like, I really feel like, the web is going to, it's easy to say that now, right? Like, oh, the web is going to be great back then. But I really felt like, these building, things based in the web where it was like, you could interact with it from anywhere and do things like that without having to install something. I really thought that was like the way. And so, in terms of like, I was just drawing the UI and, my belief in doing things via the web versus like a desktop Vic client or something.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, a lot of people now are getting into JavaScript because it's moving fast, it's exciting, there's a lot going on there. But yeah, I mean, the accessibility that you got from JavaScript, which is something that you brought up, you could just write something, you upload the file to the web, you include it on your page. That's
not really that easy anymore with all this tooling we have. But at the same time, I was on NGX with Brad Green, and he was our guest, and he said something that kind of stuck out to me. He said that, when you scaffold an application with the CLI, and whether that's the React CLI or the Angular CLI, where you're at that point is almost where you would be 2 years later after you created your first like Hello World Angular JS app, right? Like you to build real things, you have to have all these tools in place. And it might feel like a lot of pain and a lot of things to learn and just a lot going on there. But once you've kind of built out these things before and you've seen, all the stuff that it takes, I literally wrote my own dependency management system right back in the day.
Right.
And so once you know these things, it's really powerful and you're making a lot of jumps forward that I don't think a lot of people even realize. It's just done for them, and they're like, "Oh, this is so complicated," and I'm like, "Well, let me tell you, back in the day."
Yep, back in the good old days. Yep. So, how did you get into Angular?
So, I got into Angular just about the time that it was starting to take off. Really, and when was that? It was like 2013, I would say. I think it was version 1.2 is when I first started, but really about the time that it started to take off. And I was working on a project, and I was kind of evaluating which framework I wanted to use, and I kind of played with Backbone. That's back when Backbone at that time was starting to decline. And I looked at Ember and I looked at AngularJS and I think Meteor as well. And some of those are still around and doing great. And what I was trying to do was just some forms type of things. And Angular made that so easy. And that's why everyone loves Angular 1, right? Forms so stinking easy. And that's probably what 50% of the business applications we build are form-based. So when I started using that, right, and then I realized it had two-way binding, and I was like, oh my gosh, back in the day before two-way binding, I remember having to do these callbacks and then find the element that I wanted to update and then change the inner text of that element. All these types of things. I'm like, two-way binding is the best thing in the world.
Yep.
And so I started getting into that about then. And I published a couple of open source libraries. Actually wrote a virtualized data table in Angular 1. And had built out quite a bit of stuff. And kind of when Angular 2 rolled around and kind of React was taking off as well, I started trying to decide, well, I've got this huge Angular 1 app that I've built out now, and like, which, I need to upgrade, and it's going to be pretty much like a total rewrite. Which direction do I want to go? And, kind of, I felt like Angular 2 was kind of continuing my story in the evolution of like what I've done with Angular. Like, Angular is it's kind of the whole package, right? Like, I hate to compare it like this. It's kind of like .NET versus Node. Like, React is Node, .NET is Angular. I hate that comparison, but you kind of see what I'm talking about, right? Like, you have Authenticate, in .NET you have like all these tools that are kind of prepackaged that you can start using out of the box, and Angular has those as well, like your routing, HTTP. It's kind of all there in all one package. And if you're building big applications, you want these pieces to all be cohesive and kind of be in line and all work together and things like that. And I really felt like, Angular had just taken what they've done in Angular 1 and kind of matured it with Angular 2. But all the pieces that I still needed and used in Angular 1 were still there. And so, I picked it up, been using it for over 2.5 years now, Angular 2. And really, really enjoying that. We've the team that I used to work on, we wrote a couple different open source projects that are pretty popular. The Angular viewers might know some of them. NGX data table, that one's used by some huge organizations, and really excited about how that came back. Like, it's 100,000 rows on the screen, and you can scroll as fast as you possibly can, and it never lags.
Nice.
So that really speaks volumes to like the performance improvement that Angular has done. We wrote a project called NGX Charts, which is actually where Angular draws the SVGs. So we're not using D3 or anything like that to draw SVGs. We're using Angular to actually draw the SVGs.
Oh, wow.
And then we use D3 for like some of the mathematics stuff. So we still are using D3, but nothing but Angular is actually touching the DOM. So that was a really cool project that I've worked on as well.
Nice. Well, you're just doing my whole interview for me, because I usually ask, so what have you worked on that you want to talk about?
And then, of course, I went on the show, your show, and I spoke at NGConf last year on WebVR and Angular. And that is really a cool story because, in the prototypes that I built out and the talk that I talked about, I actually, instead of using Angular to like compose DOM, I use Angular to compose like WebGL scenes. Right. And Angular's got like this compiler that you can actually override and say, don't render any DOM. I'm just going to, construct objects and bind them together. And so I created this project where, you can define like your scene, your camera, like spheres and all these type of things using Angular, just like you're writing DOM, but it builds WebGL instead. And that was a really cool experiment I worked on, just kind of proving that out. And I'm really excited. Like, back in the day where I felt like, the web was the future, I really think that like augmented reality and things like that is the next evolution. And the way that we really, there's about to be another evolution in the way that we interact with computers. And it's already starting to happen, but VR is still kind of a toy at this point. But I think as like products like HoloLens and things like that, evolutionize, like those are going to radically change the way we use software. And I'm trying to get into that and be a part of that as well.
Yep, absolutely. And it's interesting. I mean, I keep winding up going to these Microsoft events, and, they have the HoloLens, but, last year at CES, I'm going to CES again this year as well. But I mean, one of the things that I saw there that was interesting was just that, you can stick your phone in a little $10 thing in front of your face, with Google Cardboard API, or it's not API, it's an interface design, I guess, for like a hardware system. But I mean, you know, it's amazing what you can do. It's amazing what you can get started with. And you don't have to spend a ton of money on the HoloLens. You can spend, like I said, $10 to this thing that straps on your head. And yeah, you know, where does that take us? You know, I think Google Glass proved that there are a lot of augmented reality things that are possible with just a small screen interface in front of your, in front of your face. So, I mean, yeah.
I had a Google Glass, and it was interesting. Like, I feel like it will be cool in maybe 5 years from now, right? Like, the big problems it had was, in order for it to be truly effective, like, and truly like powerful, it needs to be connected to the internet all the time. Like, it needs to be doing constant analysis on what you see, and that's also very scary at the same time. So there's like a social norm aspect that you're going to have there. But in order for it to like really be cool, like, it needs to be connected to the internet all the time. And the problem with that is that takes a lot of battery power, and thing would barely stay on for like a couple hours, just running like by itself. So I think we still have quite a ways to go there. But I think, you know, there's a lot of things that we can, you know, start building today with what we have. You know, ARKit came out. You can actually do augmented reality in the browser now as well. You can, there's been some talks on that around using WebAR, and that's really interesting. Of course, there's WebVR as well, but a lot of this stuff is coming to the browser, and it'll be part of like mobile experiences, and we as like developers like need to be thinking about this as we're building out our new, you know, content for these new emerging technologies.
Yep, absolutely.
So the other things that I've been doing today, you know, we mentioned I'm part of like the Angular team. I've been working on the material stuff. That's been a really, you know, exciting opportunity to kind of work with that team. Like, the brain power there is just crazy, right? And kind of work with that team and be part of this project. And that's really been really rewarding for me. And I really enjoy doing that type of stuff. You know, there's a couple new stuff coming in, you know, material that I'm really excited that's going to get released soon. We're going to start doing material like preview releases where new components are kind of in the Angular announced it kind of this like preview area, and new components will get pushed in there, so people will start being able to take advantage of new components sooner. We're like synchronizing material releases with the official Angular releases. So you'll have predictable releases in Synchronize, so everything can just be updated, etc. And so there's a lot of like really cool things that are going on there. Another thing that I'm doing, I'm on Angular Air podcasts every week. I'm, you know, that team is amazing, and I really enjoy like being part of that. And it's really exciting to talk to all the different people in the industry and hear about what they're doing, and just kind of see, like, compare experiences and see what people are up to and what's new and upcoming and things like that. So that's been a really exciting opportunity for me as well.
Yeah, we had Justin from Angular Air come on and talk about Angular Air last week. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a great show. Like, if anyone hasn't checked it out, like, it's angularair.com, and it's usually every Tuesday, but sometimes it just changes based on the guests.
Right.
I think next week we're having the Stack Blitz team on. So that'll be a really cool episode. I'm a huge fan of Stack Blitz. Like that Eric has done an amazing job with that tool.
Yeah, we had them on JavaScript Jabber and cool stuff. Yeah, we should have them on Adventures in Angular as well. Let me get an episode number for the listener. I'm curious. You mentioned that you're not a Google employee, but you're participating on the team for Angular material. So how exactly does that work? Are you a contractor for them, or you just really, really important in your off time?
I'm working as a contractor with them. So I don't really. I would love to work at Google, but I don't really want to live in Mountain View. So I'm working as a contractor with them part-time to contribute to that project. And I left my full-time job like a couple of months ago, and I've kind of just been all over the place, picking up different opportunities. So I'm working with them and a couple other companies, implementing Angular components and architecture and things like that. So
awesome. So are you looking for contracts? Because I'm happy to say, hey, hire this guy.
Right now I'm booked, but feel free to send people over my way. Like I always know people that, the Angular community is kind of a really tight-knit community, and everyone kind of knows someone. So I'm always open ears, and if you're looking for something, reach out. I'm sure I can connect you with someone that would be happy to help happy to help anyone out. Whether it's for a job or the Angular community is great. Like people, if you're willing to create a example of what you're trying to do, like most people will help you, and teach you, over Twitter or things like that. Like the community is really great.
I completely agree. Before I push us into picks, then I guess the question is, where do people find you online?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is AMCDNL. That's also my GitHub, and my blog is the same. It's amcdnl.com. I am constantly tweeting about JavaScript, WebGL, Angular stuff on my Twitter, and writing blog posts about these things. And if you follow me on GitHub, I like to publish like a lot of like random like experiments that I play with, and you can kind of see some of the open source projects that I contribute to as well. So
awesome. All right, well, let's go ahead and do some picks. Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Now, you've been on the shows, you do picks. So, So do you have some things you want to shout out about?
Yeah, so I actually have 2 picks. My buddy Todd Motto released a 7-hour training for free on NGRX with Angular. And I have had it, I've started digging into that, and it is just so well put together. And so big shout out to him, especially for, putting that out there for free for everyone. he runs Ultimate Angular, which is like a paid learning subscription thing. And so to put something this large and this cool out there is really big props to him. So, and then Shai from Hi-Res put out a new Angular course on like intro to Angular, and it is just hilarious. So I have to give him a big shout out as well.
Awesome. Yeah, Shai is a regular on Adventures in Angular now. So
yeah, Shai is awesome. So huge shout out to him and the work that he's been doing.
Yep, definitely. I've got a few shout outs of my own. So one of the things that I mentioned on the show that I'm going to shout out about is the NGConf. I think it was like a 2-hour workshop. I think they did it on, anyway, I wasn't able to make it to Angular or NGConf this year. I will be there this next year. But anyway, it was just really great. If you're looking for an introduction to Angular material, definitely check it out. It just walks you through setting up an interface with Angular material. And after about an hour, you really have something that you can work with. And it was enough. It got me far enough along to where then I could start to figure out the other pieces. So the things that they didn't talk about that I wanted in there, it was like, okay, how do I get this? It's right there. And then I can figure that out. So you kind of figure out how Angular material is put together and how a lot of those components come into play. And then it's a beautiful thing. So I'm going to shout out about that. And then I'm also going to shout out about Angular Dev Summit, which is something that I did this year in place of Angular Remote Conf. It was a week long. It was free to attend live. You can get the talks now. Just go to angulardevsummit.com and you can still just buy one of the all access passes. And I'm going to reduce the price back to $97. So then you can just get in and get access to all those talks. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, then definitely check it out. I'm also going to shout out about Angular Air. I mean, it's a great show. The one thing that I've kind of figured out, people are like, well, don't you feel like they're a competitor? If you only have 2 hours in a week, then maybe they'd be a competitor, but most people have plenty of time to listen to both shows. So, it's great that way. The other thing that I like that Angular Air does that we don't on Adventures in Angular is that you're kind of designed around running a video show and showing stuff off. And we're more designed around just talking about the topic. We don't talk about what we see on the screen and expect you to be able to see it. You kind of have to visualize it because we're audio only. And it's nice because you can actually on Angular Air then go and see what they're doing as they talk through it. And that's just cool. There's also this weird guy that wears a panda head sometimes, which, that makes me smile. So anyway, definitely check it out. They have a YouTube channel, and then you can go to the website and subscribe wherever you're going to do that. So anyway, yeah, those are my picks. Anything else that you want to just plug real quick before we sign off?
No, thanks for having me on. It was great to chat with you and kind of share my story. And I'm really excited. Kind of the takeaway is I'm really excited where we're going with web and JavaScript and Angular and for you guys that haven't been around, to see its evolution, it's really came a long way, and it's really exciting to see where it's going.
It's so true, especially when you made the example of jQuery made it easy for you to grab a DOM element, change the inner text. I remember when that was super nice, right? It was like, oh, wow. Yeah, that's handy. So, yeah, I mean, we've come a long way. Things are definitely accelerating as well. So I think we're going to see more change that makes more of a difference more frequently. And it's just a cool time to be a developer.
Absolutely. And it's so easy to get these resources as well. Everyone, is very open and sharing. Even the people that make money from this are sharing some of their stuff for free. So it's a great community.
Yep. Well, cool. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Thanks for coming, Austin.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We will catch you all next week. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.